Hi everyone, in today's video, using this weird shrubby thing on the left of the diagram, we're going to talk about all the macromolecules of life, the carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids, and more importantly, where they're found, what they're used for in a plant. And we're going to compare three different locations within a typical plant, a leaf, a trunk or stem area, and a root. Now, before we get into the cells and where those macromolecules are, let's just review what you've already learned in the class, which is there's a process called photosynthesis, which is the key process that you have to focus in on when it comes to a plant. And that process is going to take in two chemical inputs from the outside world. One is carbon dioxide or CO2, and the other is water. The CO2 is taken in from the air just right through the leaves directly, but the water has to be taken up primarily through roots, which then transport the water up through a stem or a trunk into those leaves. Now, this is only going to happen most effectively when there's sunlight present. If there's sunlight present, these two ingredients can be combined to generate the most primary sugar in all of life, which is glucose. Now, in addition, there's a waste product, oxygen, which for the most part is just released as a waste product into the air. In terms of numbers, you might remember that glucose has 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, and 6 oxygens, C6H12O6, and you can see that it would require 6 CO2s and 6 H2Os to generate it, with a bunch of oxygen as the waste product. So let us now delve into the different parts of a plant. We'll look again at leaf, stem or trunk, and root. And in these locations, these cells, the actual building blocks of these locations are quite different. They have some similarities, and the first one that I'm showing you right here is going to be a similarity in all these locations. All of these cells, in this case the leaf, have an outer layer called a cell wall. And these cell walls are just structural. They are basically to hold everything in place, keep things from basically expanding too much or collapsing too much. And these cell walls are made of fiber. If you've ever heard the term cellulose, this is it. This is just sugar put together into a big long chain in a form that can't be easily digested. So it's incredibly stable stuff. Inside those cell walls, the cells have their actual barrier. This isn't just a structural sort of exoskeleton. That's what the fiber is. This blue line represents a membrane, and there are lots of membranes inside cells, and they are made up of phospholipids. These act as barriers between inside and outside of cells in different compartments. The next thing I'm drawing in are various organelles within these cells, and this is just where various chemical reactions take place. In this case, these organelles that I'm drawing are the chloroplasts. This is where the photosynthesis happens. And while these organelles have lots and lots of membranes, which means they have lots of phospholipids in them, the actual machinery inside them, the actual enzymes, the machines that build the sugar, are proteins. And then there's one additional sort of special organelle that you need to know about. And you've probably heard of this before, and this is the nucleus. Each one of the cells is going to have a nucleus in it, and in the nucleus, there's always going to be membrane on the outside. There's going to be a bunch of protein machinery on the interior. And in addition, there are going to be a bunch of genetic materials in the form of DNA and RNA. So this is a simplification. There's a lot more going on here. But what I want you to see is that in plant leaf cells, we got a wide range of different materials, whether it's fiber or lipids or proteins or nucleic acids. This is one of the many reasons that if you want to eat part of a plant and get a good deal of nutrition out of it, photosynthetic leaves are as good as it gets. So we're talking your kale, your chard, your spinach. Yeah, these are going to be incredibly nutritious things because of all of the different nutrients available within those leaves. Now let's compare that to the cells that are found in a stem or maybe in a trunk. Now, it's going to form in some plant types something that looks kind of like a happy face right here, but each of these sort of locations has a specific function. In these sort of tubular shapes, and again, this is, if you can't tell, this structure is a sort of a vertical tube. It's hard to orient this on the drawing, but imagine this is kind of a straw going vertically in the stem, and we're now looking through the straw. In this structure, you're going to have tubes for transporting water up from the roots towards the leaves. These happen to be called xylem. Maybe you've heard of them in middle school. We also have sugar transport tubes, and these are generally going to send sugar the opposite direction from the leaves where the sugar is made down to feed cells in other parts of the plant, like the roots that would starve otherwise. These tubes happen to be called phloem. Again, maybe you read about those in middle school. On the outside of these sort of straws that make up a stem or a trunk, you're often going to have structural cells, just things giving the whole area some rigidity. Again, you don't want a stem to be too floppy or a trunk to be floppy. That's especially true. So you could have all of these structures to transport stuff or just to hold things upright. All of these structures are basically just made of fiber. You don't actually have much complexity here at all. So all of those organelles generally are not found in these cells. These cells are actually mostly, for the most part, dead. Most of a trunk is not actually alive. It's only the very outside bark, the interior of the bark that is actually alive. So most of a trunk is actually not metabolically active, not actually doing much other than passively transporting water and sugar, as you can see here. So if you want nutrition, I would not go chewing on dead wood or like trying to survive on stems. I mean, you might enjoy celery, but you're not going to get a ton of nutrition out of it. Now, if we go down to a root, this is again, like if you took a single root and sliced through it, this would be half of that root. There's going to be kind of 3 layers to it. And on the interior, you effectively have a little bit of stem. Again, you have to send all that water up and bring some of the sugar down through the root. So you do have a little bit of stem-like structure inside of a root. You even have a little bit of stem-like structure in a leaf. If you've ever seen the things that people call veins in a leaf, same thing. So we have the water and sugar transport tubes. Now outside of that though, you might have like storage structures because all through the winter, you're going to have to try to survive on whatever you've stored away from the summer and fall. And typically what you're going to store here is starch. In certain cases, you might get an elaborate structure like a potato or a turnip or a rutabaga, or it might just look like a root. So you might get some nutrition out of structures like this. It might not be quite as varied as you'd get from eating leaves, but you can get some nutrition here. On the outside of a root, if you zoom in, the cells are quite small, but they have little projections that go out into the surrounding water, hopefully. Hopefully there's enough water in the surrounding environment because these cells with little projections are there to absorb stuff. And they're going to be pulling up water as quickly as they can continually. We're talking 24 hours, 365 days a year, unless the ground is frozen or the soil is dry. They're pulling up water. In addition to the water, what they're also trying to get is a bunch of charged ions. And you don't need to know the specifics of what those are, but please know that they contain nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, which are going to be essential nutrients to keeping the plant alive and allowing it to grow. Because again, the nitrogen, the phosphorus, the sugar, these are essential for building a lot of the stuff above that you've seen. Okay, that's going to be your summary. We'll go over which nutrients are required to make which macromolecules. Hopefully this gives you an overview to get started. Thanks. See you next time.